Have you ever felt like you were at someone's mercy? Like no matter how hard you tried, someone's words and actions could throw you off balance. If you've ever been there, you may have felt helpless, like there was nothing you could do to change what was happening. This video is for you. If you are feeling overwhelmed by interactions with toxic people, people who seem to drain your energy and affect your inner peace, then you have come to the right place. What we want to show here is that there is a way to not only deal with these people, but also to find strength and serenity even in the midst of the chaos they can cause. That way lies in Stoicism, an ancient philosophy, but extremely relevant to the emotional challenges we face today. And, contrary to what many people think, Stoicism is not about being impassive or devoid of feelings. It is, in fact, about understanding what is within our control and what is not, and that changes everything. You can't control someone else's behavior, but you can control how you react to it. Imagine for a moment that you have the power to not let someone else's negativity affect your peace of mind. Stoicism teaches exactly this. It reminds us that in any situation, we have the power to choose how we react. We can be overwhelmed by the words or actions of others, or we can maintain our composure regardless of what's going on around us. In this video, we'll explore how you can use Stoic teachings to deal with toxic people, strengthen your mental health, and protect your well-being. You'll learn how to separate your emotions from other people's behavior, cultivate patience and self-control, and set clear boundaries to preserve your energy. Now, before we get started, let's pause and reflect for a moment on what it means to deal with toxic people in our daily lives. How do you feel when you're surrounded by someone who constantly saps your energy or tries to manipulate you? It's essential to recognize when someone is being toxic to us, so we don't fall into the trap of feeling like we're the cause of the problem. Before we get started, how about subscribing to our channel to strengthen our support network? Let's go. Before we begin to apply any Stoic teachings, it is crucial to understand what characterizes a toxic person and how they can affect our lives. Have you ever encountered someone who, instead of bringing you peace or joy, seems to suck it out of you, leaving you feeling drained, confused, or even insecure? These are toxic people, and their presence can have a profound impact on our mental and emotional health. Toxic people can manifest themselves in many ways. Sometimes they are manipulative, using guilt or fear to control others. Other times, they are constantly negative, trying to drag others into the abyss of their own dissatisfaction. They may be overly critical, constantly pointing out others' flaws, or even playing the victim, manipulating others' sympathy to justify their actions. Toxic behavior can also be passive. People with these attitudes may act innocent, but their words and actions have a corrosive effect. They may spread gossip, create conflict, or simply devalue you constantly without ever realizing that they are hurting you. The impact of these behaviors on our mental health is real. Anxiety, stress, low self-esteem, loneliness, among others. Constant exposure to these attitudes can undermine our confidence and inner peace, making us believe that we are always wrong or responsible for the emotional mess that surrounds us. This is where Stoicism comes in. It teaches us to observe these attitudes without letting them affect us. Instead of reacting impulsively to verbal aggression or manipulation, the Stoic observes and makes a conscious decision about how to respond. The trick is to understand that people may act in toxic ways, but their actions do not define who we are. We do not need to internalize other people's behavior. Imagine for a moment a situation in which a toxic person tries to provoke you. They call you a failure or make an aggressive criticism with the intention of destabilizing you emotionally. How do you feel? Most of the time, our first reaction is to feel a wave of anger, sadness, or even shame. The person was so incisive that their words seem to reflect a painful truth about ourselves. And the truth is that, without practicing emotional detachment, we can actually start to believe what is being said. Emotional detachment, taught by the Stoics, is the ability to observe situations and people's words without being influenced by them. It's not about ignoring your emotions, but about understanding that you don't need to react to them in an impulsive or destructive way. Emotional detachment teaches us that our emotions are momentary reactions and that we have the power to decide how we respond. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, used to reflect on the nature of people and situations, always reminding us that we cannot control the behavior of others, but we can control how we react to it. He invited us to remain calm, even when the world around us seemed to be in chaos. So how can we apply this to our daily lives? The first step is to acknowledge the emotion as it arises. Instead of reacting automatically to criticism or provocation from a toxic person, take a step back, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to feel what is happening. But then remember, your reaction is a choice. Mindfulness practices, such as deep breathing, can be extremely helpful at this time. When you feel like you're being attacked, stop, breathe, and allow yourself to not react immediately. This creates space for you to decide clearly whether the emotional reaction is really necessary, or if the best choice is to simply let the provocation pass without affecting you. Patience, a simple word, but one of the most powerful virtues we can cultivate. In Stoicism, patience is more than just waiting without complaining. It is the ability to resist the temptation to react impulsively and emotionally when something or someone challenges us. Patience is the exercise of self-improvement in the face of adversity. When faced with a toxic person, our tendency is to react, whether with anger, frustration, or even an attempt to correct the other person. But patience teaches us not to rush into action. It gives us an opportunity to reflect before speaking or acting, and reminds us that not everything needs to be responded to immediately. Sometimes, the greatest power lies in not reacting. Patience is also related to the idea of passive resistance, which means not giving in to emotional pressure and maintaining our composure in the face of provocations. When a toxic person tries to drag us into a confrontation or tries to undermine our confidence, patience teaches us to resist and act calmly. We can listen, but we don't have to absorb the negativity. Marcus Aurelius, again, is an example of someone who practiced patience in extreme situations. He dealt with crises in the Roman Empire and still managed to maintain his composure, always remembering that true strength comes from within, from the ability to control our reactions, not those of others. Practicing patience takes time and dedication. Start in smaller situations where you can control your reaction more easily. This could be in a traffic jam, an argument with a friend or colleague, or even a moment of frustration at work. Cultivate patience, and little by little, it will become second nature. Let's move on to a crucial concept in Stoicism: acceptance. Accepting the limitations of the people around us, especially the toxic ones, is essential to preserving our mental and emotional health. Acceptance, a word that often sounds like surrender or conformity, but in Stoicism, acceptance does not mean giving up or submitting to suffering. On the contrary, accepting the reality of a toxic person in our lives is an act of wisdom and self-knowledge. Accepting that a person has their limitations, that they can be manipulative, negative, or destructive, is the first step to dealing with them without losing our own emotional stability. This does not mean that we should tolerate harmful behavior or that we need to keep these people in our lives, but rather that we understand that we cannot change the essence of who they are. In Stoicism, we learn to distinguish between what we can and cannot control. We can control our own attitudes and choices, but we cannot control the behavior of others. Therefore, accepting someone's limitations is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. Acceptance is recognizing that while we cannot change the other person, we can change the way we respond to them. This acceptance also involves a certain detachment from the expectations we place on people. Sometimes we expect people to be different, to behave in ways that benefit us or make us feel good. But often, people will not live up to these expectations. And when this happens, frustration arises. Stoicism teaches us to accept people as they are, without expecting them to adapt to our needs. When someone tries to provoke us, whether with words, gestures, or attitudes, the immediate impulse is to react. The mind often screams for a response, a defense. This is natural. However, one of the greatest skills we can develop in Stoicism is learning to ignore provocations and not feed the cycle of conflict. The art of ignoring does not mean being passive or letting others treat us in any way. On the contrary, it is about consciously deciding not to react to provocations, keeping our energy intact. The Stoic knows that by responding impulsively, we fuel conflict and often lose our serenity. Ignoring provocations, therefore, is an act of self-control and wisdom. Imagine, for example, a common situation. Someone makes a joke at your expense, trying to unsettle you. What happens if you respond? Most likely, the conflict will escalate. However, if you choose not to react and continue your journey calmly, the person loses their power. They may continue to try to provoke you, but you remain unmoved. Ignoring provocations is also a way to preserve our mental health. The constant need to respond to provocations drains our emotional energy. This can lead to stress, anxiety, and even emotional exhaustion. By choosing not to react, you preserve your inner peace and avoid falling into emotional traps. Silence, in this case, is golden. The Stoics, like Seneca, were masters at not reacting to attacks or criticism. For them, the opinions of others had no power to define who they were. Their true strength lay in how they chose to react to these situations. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember, silence and serenity are your best responses. When dealing with toxic people, it's easy to be tempted to judge them entirely by their negative actions. Someone's constant criticism, manipulative behavior, or lack of empathy can cause us to see only the worst side of that person. But Stoicism teaches us something crucial. We must separate the person from their actions. The Stoic understands that as human beings, everyone has flaws and makes mistakes. This includes toxic people. However, this does not define the entire essence of a person. We can disapprove of actions, but still respect the dignity of the human being behind them. By learning to separate the action from the person, we can protect our hearts from being poisoned by harsh judgments or resentment. This concept is powerful. Often, the anger we feel towards someone comes not just from the pain they have caused us, but from our tendency to label them completely. Once we see the person as a flawed human being, rather than a malevolent entity, we can distance their actions from who they are as an individual. This doesn't mean we should allow these people to treat us badly, or that we should accept their toxic behavior. On the contrary, Stoicism teaches us that it is possible to establish clear boundaries and maintain a respectful attitude, even when someone hurts us. Acknowledging someone's flaws and still treating them with dignity is a form of emotional liberation, as we don't get caught up in other people's negativity. For example, if you have a friend who is constantly criticizing you, you can understand that this person has their own insecurities without allowing them to continue to hurt you. This is an act of compassion for yourself. By separating the person from their actions, you not only help yourself maintain your peace, but you also demonstrate a level of empathy and maturity that is rarely seen today. Now, having learned to distinguish people's actions, let's look at how one of the Stoics' greatest qualities, serenity, can be cultivated and maintained. Serenity is not just a goal, but a state of mind that reflects our control over external circumstances. Inner serenity is what many call emotional balance. For the Stoics, it is the pinnacle of philosophical practice. Maintaining serenity, no matter what happens around us, is the key to true emotional freedom. When we deal with toxic people, the first thing we lose is our composure. Their words, their behavior, their manipulation, their criticism, all of these things can take us out of our center. But true wisdom lies in not allowing anything external to change what is inside us. Maintaining calm requires practice. It requires the ability to let go of the automatic reactions that the mind and body tend to have when faced with provocation. This does not mean becoming insensitive, but rather learning to choose a wiser response. The secret is to stop before reacting, reflect on the situation, and decide how we want to respond without being dominated by emotions. This practice is essential for our mental health. When we allow others to destabilize us, we are giving them power over our emotions. But when we choose to remain calm, we are the owners of our peace. Nothing from the outside can touch us because our mind and spirit are solid and immune to the provocations of others. One way to strengthen inner serenity is to reflect daily on our own thoughts and actions. Make this a regular practice, just like meditation or mindfulness. Ask yourself every day, am I maintaining my peace today? Am I allowing something external to affect me disproportionately? Setting healthy boundaries is one of the most powerful acts of self-care we can do. Oftentimes, when dealing with toxic people, we have a hard time setting clear boundaries because we're afraid of hurting the other person or seeming selfish. However, the truth is that not setting boundaries is the biggest act of disrespect we can do to ourselves. Stoicism teaches us that we have the right to protect our inner peace. This means that when someone crosses a line of what is acceptable, we need to stand firm and say no. Setting boundaries is not a way to reject the person, but to protect our emotional energy and mental health. Toxic people often try to manipulate us or make us feel guilty about our need for protection. They may try to make us feel selfish or unkind when we set boundaries. But the truth is, we can't allow others to control us in this way. A simple example of a boundary would be, I will not accept you speaking to me in a disrespectful manner. If this continues, I will need to walk away. Clear, respectful boundaries are essential, and the beauty of Stoicism is that it gives us the courage to state them calmly and assertively, without guilt or fear of retaliation. By setting boundaries, you not only protect your peace, but you also teach others how you deserve to be treated. This is an act of self-respect and respect for your own emotional needs. Stoicism is not something you learn once and then simply apply by rote. It is a daily practice, an ongoing exercise that, when incorporated into our lives, makes us more resilient, more balanced, and better able to deal with any emotional challenge life throws at us, including toxic people. Throughout this video, we explore how Stoic principles such as emotional detachment, patience, acceptance, and equanimity can help us navigate difficult interactions with those who seek to undermine our peace. Stoicism gives us the tools to not be controlled by the emotions of others, to not react impulsively, but to make conscious decisions about how to deal with these situations. But it's important to remember that we're not looking for perfection. We're human, and it's natural that we'll sometimes be affected by a toxic person. However, Stoicism teaches us that whenever we fall, we can get back up, reflect on what we've learned, and move forward with greater wisdom. As you continue your journey, remember that true emotional freedom comes from consistently practicing these principles. It's not about being immune to hardship or avoiding suffering, but rather about learning to live in harmony with what we cannot control and making decisions that bring us peace, not anger, fear, or sadness. You don't have to let yourself be consumed by the toxic people around you. Stoicism offers you a path to freedom from the emotional chains that these people try to impose on you. By applying these practices consistently, you will be able to live a fuller, more balanced, and most importantly, more serene life. Now, with these concepts in mind, always remember, you have the power to choose how you react. That is the greatest gift Stoicism can offer. Now we have reached the end of this video, and before closing, I want to share a deep reflection with you. This is a moment of closure, but at the same time, it is the beginning of a transformative process. If you have come this far, it is because you truly care about improving your mental health, your relationships, and your ability to deal with what life throws your way. I want to acknowledge this and above all, congratulate you for this conscious choice. We often find ourselves immersed in conflicts, worn out by situations that are beyond our control, and we feel powerless in the face of certain people who seem to want to throw us off balance. Toxic people have this ability to involve us in an emotional game that, if we are not careful, can consume us from within. But with the knowledge of Stoicism, we have in our hands a true power of transformation. This philosophy teaches us that the control over our mind and our reactions is in our hands, and not in the hands of others. Our work here was to learn how to deal with toxic people, not by reacting impulsively or emotionally, but rather by responding with wisdom, empathy, and serenity. I know this process is not easy. It is not overnight that you will feel this internal change. However, true transformation begins with a first step, and that step was taken here, by understanding how not to let yourself be affected by external provocations. Now, it is time to continue this learning and truly apply these concepts in your daily life. The art of ignoring provocation that we've discussed is a fundamental skill. Knowing when to keep quiet, when to not respond in kind, and when to walk away is a clear sign of emotional strength, not weakness. At first, it may seem counterintuitive. When someone provokes or hurts you, the tendency is to want to retaliate in kind. But when you choose not to react, you are breaking the cycle of negativity and choosing a more powerful, freer response. Silence is often the strongest response you can give because it disarms the person who is trying to destabilize you. When you don't get involved in their fight, you prevent them from continuing to fuel the emotional war. So whenever someone provokes you, remember, you have the power to choose how you react. This is not about being passive or inactive, but about having control over how you decide to use your energy. Furthermore, if there is one thing that Stoicism teaches us very clearly, it is that no one can take away our inner peace, except ourselves. Many times, we get involved in emotional conflicts because we give too much power to the reactions of others. If someone insults you or tries to manipulate you, and you react with anger, frustration, or sadness, you are allowing yourself to be dominated. But when you do not allow these emotions to dominate you, the person loses the power they once had over your mind and your well-being. Now, it's worth remembering that this doesn't mean you should tolerate abusive behavior or allow toxic people to cross your boundaries. No, Stoicism teaches us to be firm and set clear boundaries. It's not about being rude or aggressive, but about being assertive in stating who we are and what we accept in our lives. By setting healthy boundaries, you are respecting yourself, and you are setting an example of respect for others as well. When you understand that you can and should set these boundaries, you free yourself from the emotional oppression that these people often try to exert over you. Limiting toxic people's access to your life is not an act of selfishness. It's an act of self-care. And as much as society often teaches us to be overly generous, true generosity begins with caring for and protecting ourselves. Another important point we discussed was the distinction between the person and their actions. When you can separate someone's flawed behavior from the person as a human being, you begin to see situations from a broader, more understanding perspective. This doesn't mean that you accept or tolerate that person's mistakes or harmful behavior, but rather that you understand that, just like you, they have limitations, flaws, and may be dealing with their own internal struggles. This creates a sense of compassion, and compassion, my friends, sets us free. The truth is that no one is immune to imperfection. We all make mistakes, and at some point, we have been toxic to someone, perhaps without even realizing it. This doesn't diminish the gravity of behaviors that hurt us, but it helps us remember that we are all on a learning journey, including the people who cause us pain. By separating the person from their actions, you are able to see that deep down, they are vulnerable too and not just a source of pain for others. I want to pause for a moment to let you reflect on all of this, not just intellectually, but practically. How can you apply this knowledge to your everyday life? How can you become more aware of when you're letting yourself be affected by the negativity of others? How can you begin to apply Stoicism to stay calm and composed, even in difficult situations? I know it's a process, and you may feel challenged to change old patterns of behavior. But remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. Stoicism doesn't promise that we'll eliminate all suffering, but it does teach us to face adversity with grace. It teaches us to transform suffering into learning. And most importantly, it teaches us to cultivate inner peace, regardless of what's happening around us. And of course, I can't help but invite you to subscribe to our channel. If you're looking for a journey of self-knowledge, growth, and balance, you're in the right place. Here, we talk about how to apply Stoicism to mental health, deal with anxiety, improve our relationships, and achieve a more serene and balanced life. By subscribing, you'll have access to deep, inspiring, and useful content that can help you face life's challenges with more clarity and tranquility. And most importantly, by being part of this community, you are not alone. We are all in this together, in this process of continuous improvement. Share your thoughts, your struggles, and your successes in the comments. Here, we create an environment of mutual support where we learn and grow together. So, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Also, leave a like if you found this content useful and share it with someone who could benefit from these teachings. Don't underestimate the power of a simple gesture like this. By sharing, you could be helping someone else transform their life. I truly hope that you will continue this quest for inner peace, that you will begin to use Stoicism not just as an intellectual philosophy, but as a daily practice that can transform the way you think, act, and most importantly, feel. Remember, you have the power to change your reaction to the world, and when you do, you change your experience of life. Finally, I would like to thank you deeply for your attention and for being here with me on this journey. You deserve to live a full, balanced, and serene life, and I am sure that, with time and practice, you will achieve that inner tranquility that we all seek. May serenity always be with you. Until the next video, and remember, true peace begins within you.